The morning sun was just beginning to warm the city when Rosa knocked gently on the twins' bedroom door. She had been with the Sterling family for 3 years now, and Saturday mornings had become her favorite time of the week. Not because of any break in routine, but because of what she got to do with the boys. "Time to wake up, you two," she called softly, pushing the door open. 2 identical heads of brown hair popped up from their beds, and within seconds both 7-year-old boys were scrambling to get dressed. "Are we going to the market today, Miss Rosa?" asked Liam, the more talkative twin. His eyes were already bright with excitement. "If you eat your breakfast and brush your teeth properly," Rosa replied with a warm smile. She had learned early on that the promise of their weekly market trip was the best motivation for these two. Lucas, the quieter twin, was already pulling on his sneakers. He didn't say much, but Rosa could see the happiness in his expression. These boys lived in a mansion with more rooms than she could count, had private tutors and everything money could buy. But somehow a simple trip to the farmer's market made them happier than any expensive toy ever could. Downstairs in the kitchen, Rosa prepared their breakfast while the boys chattered about what they might see today. Through the doorway she could hear Mr. Sterling's voice coming from his office. He was already on his 3rd business call of the morning, and it wasn't even 8 o'clock yet. The man barely slept. His wife, Mrs. Sterling, was somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean right now, flying back from a charity event in Europe. This was the life of a billionaire's family. Always busy, always somewhere else, always important meetings and calls that couldn't wait. Rosa didn't judge them for it. They were good people and they loved their sons. They just lived in a different world. That's why these market trips mattered so much. For a few hours each week, Liam and Lucas could just be regular kids, all done, Liam announced, showing Rosa his empty plate. "Me too," Lucas added quietly, drinking the last of his orange juice. Rosa checked their faces and hands, made sure they had their small backpacks, and led them toward the front door. She paused at Mr. Sterling's office and knocked lightly. He looked up from his laptop, phone still pressed to his ear. "We're heading to the market, sir," Rosa said. "We'll be back by lunch." He nodded and gave the boys a quick wave before returning to his call. The boys waved back enthusiastically, not at all bothered by their father's distraction. They were used to it. The drive to downtown took about 20 minutes. Rosa had saved up for 2 years to buy her old car, and while it wasn't fancy, it was reliable and perfect for days like this. The boys sat in the back, pointing out things through the window and making up stories about the people they saw on the sidewalks. "Look, that man is walking 5 dogs, Liam exclaimed. "I bet he's a secret agent and those are actually robot dogs that can shoot lasers." Lucas giggled, which was something he didn't do often enough. Rosa caught his smile in the rearview mirror and felt her heart warm. This quieter twin worried her sometimes. He seemed to carry something heavy in his little chest, though she couldn't figure out what. At home, he often disappeared into his own world, staring out windows or sitting alone in the library. But here, away from the mansion, he seemed lighter somehow. They found parking near the town square, and as soon as Rosa opened the car doors, the boys practically bounced out onto the sidewalk. She took each of their hands firmly. The market could get crowded, and even though the Sterling family had security that followed them everywhere at home, Rosa had insisted these trips be just the 3 of them. The boys needed to experience normal life, not life behind bodyguards. The market was already buzzing with activity. Vendors had set up their colorful stalls selling everything from fresh vegetables to handmade jewelry. The smell of baked bread mixed with the sweet scent of flowers and the savory aroma of someone grilling sausages. Street musicians played on corners, their instrument cases open for tips. People laughed and haggled and greeted their neighbors. This was real life. The kind Rosa had grown up with. The kind these boys deserved to know existed. "Can we get strawberries?" Liam asked, already pulling toward a fruit stand. "May we?" Rosa corrected gently. "And yes, we may." They spent the next hour wandering through the market. Rosa bought fresh vegetables for the week, and the boys helped pick out fruit, carefully examining each apple and orange like tiny inspectors. An elderly woman selling homemade jam insisted on giving them free samples, and Liam declared the raspberry flavor the best thing he'd ever tasted in his whole entire life. At a toy stall, they found a wooden puzzle that the boys pooled their allowance to buy together. Rosa watched them count out their dollars and coins, negotiating with the vendor like tiny businessmen. Mr. Sterling might run a billion-dollar company, but these boys knew the value of money because Rosa made sure they did. As they walked through the main square, Lucas suddenly stopped. His hand slipped from Rosa's grip and he stood completely still, staring at something ahead. Rosa followed his gaze and saw what had captured his attention. Under a large pavilion in the center of the square sat a beautiful black piano. It gleamed in the morning sunlight and a small crowd had gathered around it. An old man with silver hair was sitting at the bench, his fingers dancing across the keys. The music that flowed from the instrument was classical and elegant, filling the air with something that seemed to make even the busy market slow down for a moment. "What's wrong, Lucas?" Rosa asked, noticing the intense look on the boy's face. He didn't answer. His eyes were locked on that piano like nothing else in the world existed. Liam tugged on Rosa's other hand, wanting to move on to the next stall, but Lucas wouldn't budge. "Can we listen for a minute?" Lucas finally whispered, his voice so soft Rosa almost didn't hear it. She looked at his face and saw something she'd never seen before. His eyes were wide and absolutely fixed on the instrument. His lips were slightly parted. He looked like someone who had just discovered something they'd been searching for their entire life. "Of course we can, sweetheart," Rosa said, adjusting her shopping bags. "Come on, let's get a little closer." They moved through the small crowd until they had a good view. The elderly pianist was playing something beautiful and sad at the same time. Rosa didn't know much about classical music, but even she could tell this man was talented. His eyes were closed and his whole body swayed gently with the melody. But it was Lucas who fascinated her more than the musician. The quiet boy stood perfectly still, and Rosa noticed his fingers were moving slightly at his sides. It was almost like he was playing an invisible piano, matching the notes he heard. It was odd and sweet at the same time. Liam got bored after about 30 seconds and started fidgeting, but Lucas remained transfixed. When the old man finally finished his piece, the crowd applauded. He stood up, gave a small bow, and walked away, leaving the piano empty under its pavilion. A sign next to the instrument read, "Community Piano, everyone welcome." Rosa felt Lucas's hand slip from hers again. Before she could react, before she could call his name, the small boy was walking toward that piano bench. Her heart jumped into her throat. "Lucas, wait," she called out, reaching for him. But he was already climbing onto the bench, his small frame looking tiny next to the grand instrument. The crowd turned to look. Some people smiled, thinking it was cute. Others frowned, probably assuming a child was about to bang randomly on the keys and ruin the peaceful atmosphere. Rosa rushed forward, already apologizing. "I'm so sorry. He's never done anything like this before. I'll get him down right now." But then Lucas's small fingers touched the keys and everything changed. Rosa's heart was pounding as she moved toward the piano bench. She could already imagine the embarrassment, the noise, the disapproving looks from the crowd. Lucas was a sweet child, but he'd never touched a piano in his life. The Sterling mansion had one in the music room, but it stayed covered with a dust cloth, locked away like some kind of forbidden artifact that nobody was allowed to mention. Her hand was just inches from Lucas's shoulder when the first note rang out. It wasn't a bang. It wasn't a random plinking. It was clear and pure, hanging in the air like a crystal bell. Rosa froze mid-reach. Her mouth fell open. Then came the second note. And the third, and suddenly Lucas's small fingers were moving across the keys with a confidence that made no sense. The melody that emerged wasn't simple. It wasn't "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" or "Mary Had a Little Lamb." This was something complex and beautiful and completely impossible. Rosa's hand dropped to her side. She took a step back, nearly stumbling into Liam, who stood beside her with his mouth hanging open in shock. "Is that Lucas?" Liam whispered, his voice squeaking with confusion. "Our Lucas?" Rosa couldn't answer. She couldn't speak. She could barely breathe. All she could do was watch as this 7-year-old boy, this quiet child who rarely said more than a few words at a time, played piano like someone who'd been training their entire life. The crowd had gone completely silent. The woman who'd been frowning just moments ago now had tears streaming down her cheeks. A young couple stopped mid-conversation, their coffee cups frozen halfway to their lips. The vendor who'd been selling vegetables abandoned his stall and moved closer. His weathered face filled with wonder. Lucas's eyes were closed. His small body swayed gently with the music like he was being carried by it. His fingers danced from key to key without hesitation. without a single wrong note. The song was sad and beautiful at the same time, the kind of music that reaches into your chest and squeezes your heart. Rosa had worked for the Sterling family for 3 years. She'd helped Lucas with his homework, bandaged his scraped knees, tucked him into bed at night. She'd watched him struggle to speak up in a room, seen him hide behind his brother when meeting new people. This boy was shy and quiet and always seemed to be somewhere else in his mind. But this was someone else entirely. Or maybe, Rosa thought with a chill running down her spine, this was who Lucas truly was all along, and nobody had known. More people were gathering now. The crowd grew from 10 to 20 to 30. Shoppers set down their bags. Parents lifted children onto their shoulders for a better view. An old man with a cane moved closer, his eyes wide with disbelief. Rosa heard someone behind her whisper, "Is this some kind of performance? Is he a professional?" "He's 7 years old," Rosa heard herself say, though her voice sounded far away and strange. The music continued to flow, filling the entire square. It rose and fell like ocean waves, gentle and powerful at the same time. Rosa didn't know the name of the piece, didn't know anything about classical music really, but she could feel it. Every note seemed to tell a story, to carry emotion that words couldn't express. A woman near the front of the crowd had pulled out her phone and was recording. Then another person did the same. Within moments, dozens of phones were pointed at the piano, capturing this impossible moment. Rosa knew she should probably stop them, that Mr. and Mrs. Sterling valued their privacy, that having their son on video for the world to see might cause problems. But she couldn't move. She was as frozen as everyone else. Liam grabbed Rosa's hand tightly. "I didn't know he could do that," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "We share a room, we do everything together." "How did he learn? When did he learn?" Rosa squeezed his hand back but had no answers to give. None of this made sense. In the mansion, Lucas never went near the music room. Mrs. Sterling had told Rosa once, during a rare moment of openness, that the piano had belonged to her mother who had passed away before the twins were born. A concert pianist who'd traveled the world, playing for thousands of people. Mrs. Sterling couldn't bear to look at the instrument anymore. It reminded her too much of what she'd lost. The piano had been covered ever since. A ghost in the corner. A memory too painful to touch. So how was Lucas playing like this? Where had he learned? When had he practiced? The music shifted, becoming faster, more intense. Lucas's small hands moved with increasing speed, reaching for keys that seemed too far apart for his little fingers. But somehow, impossibly, he made it work. The melody built and built, climbing higher and higher, until Rosa felt like her heart might burst from her chest. And then suddenly, it slowed. The notes became gentle again, soft and sweet, like a lullaby. Lucas's face was peaceful, almost serene. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. Rosa had never seen him look so content, so completely at ease. The final notes came slowly, deliberately. Each one hung in the air for a moment before fading away. When Lucas played the very last key, the sound echoed through the square. And then, there was nothing but absolute silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The whole world seemed to be holding its breath. Lucas opened his eyes slowly, as if waking from a dream. He looked around at the crowd of people staring at him, and suddenly the peaceful expression vanished. His eyes went wide with fear. His hands pulled back from the keys like they'd been burned. His whole body tensed up, and Rosa recognized the look instantly. He was panicking. Then the applause started. It began with one person clapping, then two, then suddenly, everyone. The sound was thunderous, echoing off the buildings around the square. People were cheering, whistling, shouting words of amazement. The old man with the cane was wiping his eyes. The young mother holding her baby had tears running down her face. Complete strangers were hugging each other, laughing with joy and disbelief. But Lucas looked terrified. His eyes searched frantically through the crowd, and when they found Rosa, he scrambled down from the bench so fast he nearly fell. She rushed forward and caught him, pulling him into her arms as he pressed his face against her shoulder. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered, holding him tight. "It's okay, you're safe." Liam pushed through the crowd and wrapped his arms around both of them. "That was amazing, Lucas," he said, his voice full of awe. "You were so cool." But Lucas was shaking. Rosa could feel him trembling against her. The quiet boy who'd just played like an angel was now just a scared 7-year-old who didn't understand what was happening. The crowd was pressing closer, people trying to get a better look, asking questions all at once. Where does he study? Who's his teacher? How long has he been playing? Is he taking students? Can we get a picture? Rosa held up one hand, trying to create space around them. "Please, step back. He's just a child. Please give us some room." Most people respected the request and moved back. But a well-dressed woman with silver hair cut through the crowd with determined steps. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and an air of authority that made people naturally step aside for her. "Please wait," the woman said urgently, reaching into her purse and pulling out a business card. "I'm Professor Helen Chen from the National Conservatory of Music. I've been teaching piano for 40 years and I need to speak with this child's parents." That wasn't just playing. That was interpretation. That was understanding. That was gift. Rosa took the card with her free hand, barely looking at it. Her mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do next. The videos. Dozens of people had recorded Lucas. By tonight, this would probably be all over social media. Mr. Sterling would see it. Mrs. Sterling would see it. And Rosa would have to explain how she'd let this happen, how she'd brought the boys to the market, and somehow one of them had revealed a secret talent that nobody knew existed. She could lose her job. After 3 years, after becoming part of this family, after coming to love these boys like they were her own, she might lose everything because of this one moment. But as she looked down at Lucas, still hiding his face against her shoulder, she realized something else. This wasn't about her job. This wasn't about keeping secrets or avoiding trouble. This was about a little boy who'd somehow learned to speak through music when words failed him. And whether she liked it or not, whether it was convenient or not, everything was about to change. The drive back to the Sterling mansion was the longest 20 minutes of Rosa's life. Lucas sat silently in the back seat, staring out the window with his hands folded tightly in his lap. Liam kept glancing at his brother, opening his mouth to say something, then closing it again. The excitement from the market had faded, replaced by a heavy tension that filled the car like fog. Rosa's mind was spinning. Professor Chen's business card felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket. Her phone had already buzzed 3 times with notifications. She didn't need to check to know what they were. Videos. The performance was already spreading online. In today's world, something like this could go viral in minutes. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, trying to figure out what she was going to say to Mr. Sterling. How do you explain something you don't understand yourself? How do you tell a billionaire that his 7-year-old son has been hiding a gift that nobody knew existed? When they pulled up to the mansion, Rosa helped the boys out of the car and carried the shopping bags toward the house. Her hands were shaking slightly. The security guard at the gate had given her an odd look when they arrived. Did he already know? Had someone sent him the video? Inside, the house was quiet. Mr. Sterling's office door was closed, which meant he was still drowning in business calls. Rosa took the boys upstairs and started to unpack their bags. Lucas went straight to his bed and sat down, still silent. Liam hovered near him, clearly worried about his brother. "Lucas," Rosa said gently, kneeling down in front of him. "Sweetheart, I need to ask you something important. Where did you learn to play piano like that?" Lucas didn't look at her. His eyes stayed fixed on his hands. "You're not in trouble," Rosa assured him quickly. "I promise you're not in trouble, but I need to understand. Have you been taking lessons? Does someone at school teach you?" Slowly, Lucas shook his head. "Then how?" Rosa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, so quietly she almost couldn't hear, he spoke. "At night, when everyone's sleeping." Rosa felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "I go downstairs," Lucas continued, still not meeting her eyes, "to the music room. I take the cover off the piano and I play. I found headphones in the drawer so nobody can hear me. I've been doing it for a long time. Liam's mouth dropped open. You sneak out of our room? At night, how did I never wake up? Lucas finally looked up and Rosa saw tears gathering in his eyes. I'm really quiet. I learned how to open the door without making noise. I walk on the sides of the stairs where they don't creak. I counted the steps so I can do it in the dark without turning on lights. Rosa sat back on her heels, stunned. This quiet, shy little boy had been sneaking through a mansion full of security cameras and motion sensors for who knows how long, and nobody had caught him. Lucas, how long have you been doing this? 2 years, he whispered. Maybe more. I don't remember exactly when I started. 2 years? Rosa repeated, her voice rising slightly. You've been teaching yourself piano for 2 years. Who showed you how? Lucas stood up and walked to his bookshelf. He pulled out what looked like a school notebook, but when he opened it, Rosa saw it was full of handwritten notes and diagrams. Grandma's books, he said softly. They were in the piano bench. Music books with instructions. And sheets with the notes written on them. I didn't understand at first, but I kept trying until I figured it out. Grandma? Rosa asked, though she already knew the answer. The picture in Mommy's room, Lucas explained. The lady at the piano. Liam told me that's our grandmother who died before we were born. Her name was Catherine. I found her books and her music, and it was like she was teaching me, even though she's gone. Rosa felt her throat tighten. Mrs. Sterling's mother, the concert pianist who'd traveled the world. The reason the piano stayed covered, too painful to look at. And somehow this child had found his grandmother's teaching materials and used them to train himself in secret for 2 years. But why didn't you tell anyone? Liam asked his brother. Why did you hide it? Lucas's face crumpled and tears started rolling down his cheeks. Because the piano makes Mommy sad. I heard her crying once when she was talking to Daddy about it. She said she couldn't look at it because it reminded her too much of Grandma. I thought if she knew I was playing it, it would make her cry more. So I only played when nobody could see or hear. Just me and the piano and Grandma's music. Rosa pulled Lucas into her arms as he started to sob. Her own eyes were burning with tears. This sweet boy had been carrying this secret alone for years, hiding his gift because he didn't want to cause his mother more pain. He'd taught himself to play, sneaking through the house like a little ghost, spending his nights with only memories of a grandmother he'd never met as his guide. Oh, sweetheart, Rosa whispered, rocking him gently. You didn't do anything wrong. You have a gift. A beautiful, amazing gift. But now everyone knows, Lucas cried. They took videos. Mommy and Daddy will find out. Mommy will be sad again, and it's all my fault. No, Rosa said firmly, pulling back to look at his face. Listen to me, Lucas. Your mother won't be sad. She'll be amazed. She'll be proud. You brought your grandmother's music back to life. That's not something to hide. That's something beautiful. But even as she said the words, Rosa's stomach twisted with worry. She hoped she was right. She prayed Mrs. Sterling would see this as the gift it was and not as a painful reminder of loss. But she wouldn't know for sure until she told them. And that conversation couldn't wait any longer. I need you boys to stay up here for a little while, Rosa said, wiping Lucas's tears with her thumb. I need to talk to your father. Liam, can you keep your brother company? Liam nodded seriously, putting his arm around Lucas. We'll play with the puzzle we bought. Right, Lucas? Lucas nodded weakly, still sniffling. Rosa stood up and walked to the door, her heart hammering in her chest. She paused and looked back at the twins. Liam was already pulling out the wooden puzzle, trying to distract his brother. Lucas was watching her with fearful eyes, probably convinced that his whole world was about to come crashing down. It's going to be okay, Rosa promised, though she wasn't sure who she was trying to convince more, Lucas or herself. She walked down the long hallway, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. The Sterling mansion had always felt too big, too empty despite all its expensive furniture and artwork. But right now it felt massive, like she was walking miles to reach Mr. Sterling's office. When she got to his door, she could hear him still on the phone, his voice sharp and businesslike as he discussed quarterly reports and market projections. Rosa raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. Once she did this, there was no going back. Everything would change. Her phone buzzed in her pocket again. Another notification. The video was spreading. By now, thousands of people had probably seen it. Maybe tens of thousands. The decision was being made for her. She couldn't keep this secret even if she wanted to. Rosa knocked firmly on the door. Not now, Mr. Sterling called from inside. I'm in the middle of... It's about Lucas, Rosa interrupted, her voice stronger than she felt. It's urgent. There was a pause, then she heard him say into the phone, I'll have to call you back. A moment later, the door opened. Mr. Sterling looked down at her with concern. He was a tall man, always dressed in expensive suits even on Saturdays, his dark hair graying at the temples. He looked tired. He always looked tired. What's wrong? He asked. Is Lucas hurt? No, sir, Rosa said. But something happened at the market today. Something you need to see. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands and found one of the videos that someone had tagged her in. She'd watched it once in the car while the boys were getting their seatbelts on, and it had made her cry. Now she handed the phone to Mr. Sterling and watched his face as he pressed play. At first, his expression was confused, then surprised, then completely shocked. His eyes went wide and his mouth fell open slightly. He watched the entire video without saying a word, and when it ended, he immediately played it again. That's Lucas? He finally asked, his voice barely audible. Yes, sir. Playing piano? Yes, sir. But he's never... Mr. Sterling looked up from the phone, his face pale. We don't even... The piano is covered. Nobody plays it. How is this possible? Rosa took a deep breath. Sir, I think you should sit down. Lucas told me something, and you need to hear it. All of it. Mr. Sterling stumbled back to his desk chair and sat down heavily. Rosa followed him into the office and closed the door behind her. Then she told him everything. About Lucas sneaking downstairs at night. About finding his grandmother's music books. About teaching himself for 2 years in complete secrecy. About playing with headphones so nobody would know. About hiding his gift because he thought it made his mother sad. As she spoke, she watched Mr. Sterling's face transform. Shock gave way to disbelief, then to something that looked like pain, and finally to something else entirely. His eyes filled with tears, and when Rosa finished talking, he put his face in his hands. My mother-in-law used to play exactly like that, he said, his voice breaking. The same way. With the same feeling. I heard her perform once years ago before she got sick. It was like the piano was part of her. Like the music came from her soul. And Lucas? He plays the same way. He looked up at Rosa, tears streaming down his face. He never met her. He never heard her play. But somehow he found her music. And she taught him anyway. Mr. Sterling sat in silence for what felt like an eternity, staring at Rosa's phone as the video played for the 3rd time. The sound of Lucas's piano filled the office, and Rosa watched as tears continued to roll down her employer's face. She'd worked for this man for 3 years and had never seen him cry. She'd barely seen him smile. He was always composed, always in control, always the powerful businessman who ran an empire. But right now, he looked like just a father who discovered something beautiful and heartbreaking about his son. When the video ended, he set the phone down carefully on his desk and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Does Victoria know? He asked quietly, referring to his wife by her first name. Have you told her? No, sir, Rosa replied. You're the first person I've told. Well, besides Liam. He was there when it happened. Mr. Sterling nodded slowly, then reached for his phone. She needs to know. She's still on the plane, but she should have landed in New York by now. She's probably waiting for her connecting flight. He dialed and put the phone on speaker. It rang 4 times, and Rosa was starting to think it would go to voicemail when a woman's voice answered, slightly breathless. Darling, I just landed. I was going to call you in an hour once I... Victoria, Mr. Sterling interrupted gently. I need you to sit down. Something's happened with Lucas. There was immediate panic in her voice. What, is he hurt? Is he sick? What hospital? He's fine, Mr. Sterling said quickly. He's not hurt. But something happened today and I need to show you something. Can you open your phone? I'm going to send you a video. A video? I don't understand. What's going on? Mr. Sterling's hands were shaking slightly as he forwarded the video to his wife. Rosa could hear the confusion in Mrs. Sterling's voice turn to silence as she presumably opened the file. Then there was nothing but the faint sound of the piano playing through her phone's speaker. Rosa waited, barely breathing. This was the moment that mattered most. Mrs. Sterling's reaction would determine everything. Would she be angry? Heartbroken? Would she see this as a betrayal? Her son touching the one thing that reminded her most of her mother? The video must have ended because the silence stretched on and on. Rosa counted the seconds, 10, 20, 30, Victoria. Mr. Sterling said softly. Are you there? A sound came through the phone. It took Rosa a moment to realize what it was. Mrs. Sterling was sobbing, not quiet tears but deep, gasping sobs that seemed to come from somewhere profound inside her. Victoria, please talk to me, Mr. Sterling pleaded, his own voice breaking again. That's Lucas, she finally managed to say between sobs. Our Lucas? Playing my mother's piano? Yes, but how? We never. The piano's been covered for years. I couldn't bear to look at it after Mom died. How is this possible? Mr. Sterling glanced at Rosa and she nodded, encouraging him to continue. He took a deep breath. He's been teaching himself. At night, when everyone's asleep, he goes down to the music room. He found your mother's teaching books in the piano bench. Her sheet music. Her notes. He's been using them to learn, Victoria. For 2 years. Maybe longer, more sobbing. Rosa wished she could see Mrs. Sterling's face to know if these were tears of sadness or something else. He thought it would make you sad. Mr. Sterling continued, his voice gentle. He heard you crying once talking about the piano, about your mother. So he hid it. He only played when he thought nobody would know. He didn't want to cause you more pain. Oh God, Mrs. Sterling whispered. My baby, my sweet baby boy. She was quiet for a moment and Rosa could hear her taking deep breaths, trying to compose herself. He plays just like her. Did you hear it? The way he interprets the music? That's exactly how Mom played. She always said music wasn't about the notes on the page. It was about the feeling behind them. And Lucas, he understands that. Somehow he understands. I know, Mr. Sterling said softly. Where is he now? Can I talk to him? He's upstairs in his room. Victoria, he's scared. He thinks he did something wrong. He thinks you're going to be angry or upset. Rosa had to pull him away from the piano at the market because he was panicking from all the attention. The market? Mrs. Sterling's voice sharpened slightly. This happened in public. There were people watching? Rosa felt her stomach drop. Here it comes, she thought. The anger. The blame. There's more, Mr. Sterling said, looking at Rosa apologetically. The video I sent you? That's not the only one. Dozens of people recorded it. It's already online. It's spreading quickly. By tomorrow it could be everywhere. Silence again. Rosa braced herself for the explosion. For Mrs. Sterling to demand answers about why Rosa had let this happen. Why she hadn't protected the boy's privacy. Why she hadn't stopped Lucas before he could sit down at that piano. But when Mrs. Sterling spoke again, her voice was different, calmer, almost wondering. My mother always dreamed that her music would continue. That someone in the family would carry on what she started. When I gave up piano after she died, I thought that dream died with her. I couldn't play anymore. Every time I tried, all I could feel was the grief. She paused and Rosa heard her take a shaky breath. But Mom found a way. Even though she never met the boys, even though she's been gone for 8 years, she found a way to teach Lucas. Her books, her music, her spirit. It was all there waiting for him. And he found it. My son found his grandmother through music. So you're not angry? Mr. Sterling asked carefully. Angry? Mrs. Sterling laughed, though it came out more like a sob. I'm devastated that I made him feel he had to hide this. I'm heartbroken that my grief made my son think his gift would cause me pain. But angry? No, I'm amazed. I'm grateful. I'm so proud of him I can barely breathe. Rosa felt tears streaming down her own face now. She wiped them away quickly, but Mr. Sterling noticed and gave her a small, understanding smile. When does your connecting flight leave? He asked his wife. In 2 hours. But I'm going to try to get on an earlier one. I need to come home. I need to see Lucas. I need to tell him that he didn't do anything wrong, that his gift is beautiful, that his grandmother would be so proud of him. There's something else, Mr. Sterling said. A professor from the National Conservatory of Music was at the market. She gave Rosa her card. She wants to talk to us about Lucas. She called him a prodigy. A prodigy, Mrs. Sterling repeated softly. My mother would have loved that. She always said true talent couldn't be taught. It could only be discovered and nurtured. What do you want to do? Mr. Sterling asked. About the professor? About the videos? About everything? There was a long pause. Rosa could almost hear Mrs. Sterling thinking through the phone, processing everything that had happened, everything that was about to change. First, I want to talk to Lucas, she finally said. Put him on the phone. I need to hear his voice. I need him to know that everything's okay. Mr. Sterling looked at Rosa and nodded toward the door. Can you bring him down? And Liam, too. They should both hear this. Rosa practically ran up the stairs. When she opened the boys' bedroom door, she found them exactly where she'd left them. Liam was trying to work on the puzzle, but Lucas was still sitting on his bed, his face pale and worried. Both boys looked up at her with fearful eyes. Lucas, Rosa said gently, your mom wants to talk to you. Lucas's eyes went wide with terror. Is she mad? Rosa knelt down in front of him and took his small hands in hers. No, sweetheart. She's not mad. She's proud. She wants to tell you herself. Come on, both of you. Let's go downstairs. The boys followed her down the hallway and into Mr. Sterling's office. Their father was still on the phone, but when he saw them, his face softened in a way Rosa had never seen before. He held out his arms and both boys ran to him. He pulled them into a tight hug, kissing the tops of their heads. Your mom's on the phone, he said softly to Lucas. She wants to talk to you. He held the phone where Lucas could hear, and Mrs. Sterling's voice came through, warm and full of love despite the tears Rosa could still hear in it. Lucas, baby, are you there? Yes, Mommy, Lucas whispered, his voice tiny and scared. I just watched a video of you playing piano. The one from the market today. Lucas started to cry. I'm sorry, Mommy. I didn't mean to make you sad. I tried to keep it secret. I only played when nobody could hear. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, my darling boy, Mrs. Sterling said, her own voice breaking. You have nothing to be sorry for, nothing, do you understand me? What you did was beautiful. What you've been doing all this time, learning to play, keeping Grandma's music alive. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But the piano makes you cry, Lucas sobbed. It used to make me cry because I missed my mother so much, Mrs. Sterling explained gently. But now, knowing that you've been playing it, that you learned from her books, that you play with the same love she had for music, Lucas, that doesn't make me sad. That makes me happy. It makes me feel like Mom is still here with us, teaching you, watching over you, sharing her gift with you. Really? Lucas asked, his voice so small and hopeful it broke Rosa's heart. Really, truly, Mrs. Sterling promised. And when I get home tonight, I want you to play for me. Not in secret, not in the dark, but together. You and me. We'll uncover that piano and let it sing again. Would you like that? Lucas nodded, then realized she couldn't see him. Yes, Mommy, I'd like that a lot. Good. Then that's what we'll do. I love you so much, Lucas, you and your brother both. I'm going to be home soon, okay? Okay, Lucas said. And for the first time since the market, Rosa saw him smile. When Mr. Sterling ended the call, he kept both boys close, and Rosa quietly stepped toward the door to give them privacy. But Mr. Sterling called her back. Rosa, wait. You should stay. You're part of this family, too. Mrs. Sterling arrived home just after sunset. Rosa heard the car pull up to the mansion and watched from the upstairs window as the elegant woman practically ran from the vehicle, not even waiting for the driver to open her door. She'd been traveling for nearly 20 hours, crossing an ocean to attend a charity event, and she had to be exhausted. But she moved like someone who'd found new energy, like nothing else in the world mattered except getting to her sons. Rosa had spent the afternoon with the boys, trying to keep them calm. Liam had eventually relaxed and gone back to his puzzle, but Lucas had been a bundle of nervous energy. He'd paced around his room, sat down, stood up, looked out the window at least 50 times watching for his mother's car. Rosa understood. His whole world had turned upside down in a single day, and even though his mother had said beautiful things on the phone, he needed to see her face. He needed to know for certain that everything was truly okay. The front door opened and they heard Mrs. Sterling's voice calling up the stairs. Boys, where are my boys? Lucas ran. Rosa had never seen him move so fast. He bolted out of the bedroom and down the hallway with Liam close behind him. Rosa followed at a distance, wanting to give the family their moment, but needing to see it for herself. At the bottom of the grand staircase, Mrs. Sterling dropped her bags and opened her arms wide. Lucas flew into them and she caught him, lifting him off his feet despite him being 7 years old and not exactly small anymore. She buried her face in his hair, and Rosa could see her shoulders shaking with sobs. I'm so sorry, baby, Mrs. Sterling kept saying. I'm so sorry I made you feel like you had to hide. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Mommy. Lucas said, his own voice muffled against her shoulder. You're not sad anymore, right? The piano doesn't make you cry? Mrs. Sterling pulled back to look at his face, cupping his cheeks in her hands. The piano is going to make me cry, she admitted with a watery smile. But happy tears. Because every time I see it now, I'll think of you and your grandmother, and how love and music can connect people across time, even when we think we've lost them forever. She pulled Liam into the embrace too, kissing his forehead. Mr. Sterling came down the stairs and wrapped his arms around all three of them. And for a moment, the Sterling family was complete in a way Rosa had never seen before. Not just physically together, but truly connected. After a few minutes, Mrs. Sterling wiped her eyes and looked around. Where's Rosa? Rosa stepped forward from where she'd been hanging back near the stairs. I'm here, ma'am. Mrs. Sterling walked over and, to Rosa's complete shock, pulled her into a tight hug. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for taking them to the market. Thank you for letting them be normal kids. Thank you for giving Lucas the freedom to discover who he is. If you hadn't done that, we might never have known about his gift. Rosa felt her own tears starting again. I didn't do anything special, ma'am. I just took them shopping. You did everything special, Mrs. Sterling insisted, pulling back to look at her. You gave them experiences beyond these walls. You let them explore the world, and because of that, my son found his voice. She squeezed Rosa's hands. You're not just their caregiver. You're family. I hope you know that. Rosa could only nod, too emotional to speak. Mrs. Sterling turned back to Lucas, taking his hand. Now I believe you promised to play something for me. Are you ready? Lucas nodded, suddenly looking nervous again. The whole family, with Rosa trailing behind, walked through the mansion toward the music room. It was a large space with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the gardens. And in the center, covered with a white cloth that had gathered dust for years, sat the grand piano. Mrs. Sterling stood in the doorway for a long moment, just looking at it. Rosa could see the emotions playing across her face, grief, love, pain, hope, all mixed together. Then she took a deep breath and walked forward. She reached for the cloth and slowly pulled it away. The piano underneath was beautiful, black and polished even under the dust. Mrs. Sterling ran her hand along its surface and her fingers trembled. Hi, Mom, she whispered so softly Rosa almost didn't hear. I'm sorry I covered you up. I'm sorry I stayed away. But your grandson found you anyway. You would have loved him so much. She opened the keyboard cover and Lucas climbed onto the bench without being asked. He looked tiny sitting there, his feet dangling well above the floor pedals. But when he placed his hands on the keys, something shifted. He didn't look small anymore. He looked like he belonged there. What should I play? Lucas asked, looking up at his mother. Mrs. Sterling smiled through her tears. Whatever your heart wants to play. Whatever Grandma taught you. Lucas closed his eyes for a moment, thinking. Then his fingers found the keys and music filled the room. It was different from what he'd played at the market. Softer, gentler, like a conversation between people who loved each other. Rosa recognized it from somewhere but couldn't place it. Mrs. Sterling gasped. That's Claire de Lune. That was Mom's favorite piece. She played it at my wedding. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks, but she was smiling, really smiling. Mr. Sterling put his arm around his wife's shoulders and they stood together, watching their son play. Liam sat on the floor near the piano, watching his brother with a mix of pride and wonder. And Rosa stood in the doorway, feeling grateful to witness this moment of healing. When Lucas finished, he opened his eyes and looked at his mother with uncertainty. Was that okay? It was perfect, she said, walking over and sitting next to him on the bench. Can I play something with you, a duet? I haven't played in 8 years, so I'll probably be rusty, but I'd like to try. Lucas's face lit up with pure joy. Really, you'll play with me? If you'll have me as your partner, she said, positioning her hands over the higher keys while Lucas took the lower ones. They started slowly, finding their rhythm together. Mrs. Sterling made mistakes, her fingers stumbling over notes she used to know by heart. But Lucas didn't mind. He adjusted his playing to match hers, slowing down when she needed time, supporting her melody with gentle harmonies. Mother and son, playing together, filling the room with music that was imperfect and beautiful and healing all at once. The next few weeks brought big changes to the Sterling household. The video from the market had indeed gone viral. With millions of views and countless shares, news outlets picked up the story. People called Lucas a prodigy, a miracle, a gift. But inside the mansion, he was still just Lucas, a quiet 7-year-old boy who loved music and puzzles and trips to the market with Rosa. Professor Chen came to visit, and after hearing Lucas play for 2 hours straight, she offered him a spot in the conservatory's youth program. But Mrs. Sterling made it clear that Lucas's education would be on his terms, at his pace. No pressure, no unrealistic expectations, just the joy of learning and playing. My mother always said that music forced on someone becomes a prison, Mrs. Sterling explained to the professor. But music discovered freely becomes wings. I won't clip my son's wings with expectations and schedules that steal his childhood. They compromised. Lucas would take lessons twice a week, study with other young musicians, and perform occasionally if he wanted to. But he'd still go to regular school. He'd still go to the market on Saturdays with Rosa. He'd still be allowed to just be a kid. Liam, watching all the attention his brother received, had confided to Rosa that he felt a bit left out. So Mrs. Sterling bought him a violin, and he started lessons too. It turned out that musical talent ran in the family. Liam had his grandmother's gift too, just expressed through a different instrument. Now some evenings the music room would fill with the sound of piano and violin together, two brothers making music as Mrs. Sterling watched with proud tears in her eyes. As for Rosa, her role in the family changed. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling asked her to become the boys' educational coordinator, working with their schools and music teachers to make sure they stayed balanced and happy. It came with a significant raise and a new title, but more importantly, it came with recognition that she'd always been more than just hired help. She was part of the family. 6 months after that day at the market, Lucas gave his first real performance at a small concert hall. It wasn't a big venue, only about 200 seats, but it was packed. Rosa sat in the front row with her own family, who'd come to see the boy she'd cared for play. Mrs. Sterling sat next to her husband, holding his hand tightly. And in the seat beside Mrs. Sterling was an empty chair with a single white rose on it, a place for Grandma Catherine, who was there in spirit watching her grandson share her gift with the world. Lucas walked onto the stage in a simple black suit, looking nervous but determined. He sat at the piano bench, adjusted his position, and placed his hands on the keys. Before he started playing, he looked out into the audience and found his mother's face. She smiled at him and placed her hand over her heart. He smiled back, then closed his eyes. The music that came from that piano was pure magic. The audience sat in complete silence, some wiping tears, others simply lost in the beauty of the moment. And Rosa, watching this quiet boy who'd hidden his gift for so long finally sharing it freely with the world, felt her heart swell with pride. When Lucas played the final note and the audience erupted in applause, he opened his eyes and looked directly at the empty chair with the white rose. He stood up and gave a small bow, first to the audience, then specifically to that chair. To his grandmother. To the woman who'd taught him from beyond the grave, whose books and music and spirit had guided him to discover who he was meant to be. Later that night, after all the congratulations and photos and excitement had died down, Rosa found Lucas sitting in the music room at home, running his fingers quietly over the piano keys without pressing them down hard enough to make sound. "You were amazing tonight," she told him, sitting beside him on the bench. "Thanks, Miss Rosa," he said softly. "I was really scared, but you did it anyway. That's what courage is." Lucas was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you think Grandma would be proud of me?" Rosa thought about the video she'd seen 100 times now, about the beauty Lucas created every time he played, about how he'd brought healing to his mother and joy to thousands of strangers who'd watched him online. She thought about how a 7-year-old boy had taught himself one of the world's most difficult instruments simply because he heard music in his soul and needed to let it out. "I think," Rosa said, putting her arm around his shoulders, "that your grandmother is the proudest person in heaven right now. And I think that every time you play, she's right there with you, smiling." Lucas leaned against her and smiled. Outside the window, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and in the Sterling mansion, where grief had once kept a piano covered and silent, music lived again. All because a maid had taken 2 boys to the market one ordinary Saturday morning, and something extraordinary had happened.